you a student, mentor, or parent that loves robotics? Then you're in the right place. Up-to-date info on all things robotics. This is the Robozone Podcast with your host, Pete Ekman. The Robozone Podcast is brought to you by Kettering University. It's a Kettering-built world.
Hello and welcome to the 23rd episode of the Robozone Podcast. This podcast is for Tuesday, July 11th. In this episode, we talk to Chris Summers out of Bedford, and he directs 5 different FTC teams. He's the head mentor for the Loose Screws, so I hope you enjoy this podcast. Hi guys, welcome to the Robozone Podcast, and with me tonight I have Chris Summers from Bedford Robotics, and we're going to start talking about FTC. The FTC new game is coming up. Fast and Furious here is going to be announced on September 9th, so I wanted to get Chris on the line so that he could share some of his experiences with FTC, and we'll talk about FRC and that type of stuff. So welcome, Chris. How are you doing tonight?
Good. How are you doing?
Good. So, Chris, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, I am a coach of the Bedford FTC Robotics team, the Loose Screws. I've been a coach since 2012, and I'm also a mentor of the 4 other Bedford FTC teams in our program.
So you have 5 total, and just for everyone out there listening, it's 16, 79, 85, 79, 70, 85. You said the Loose Screws, which is 5237, and finally 7215. That is a lot of FTC teams.
Oh, yes, it gets crowded some nights, especially Saturdays.
So you represent the Loose Screws, which looks like it was the very first one there, just by team number, right?
Yeah, that was the first one. The next year, we got enough students to make the Bionic Broncos. Then the next year, we made 2 more teams, Turning Gears and Classical Engineers. And finally, we rounded up with Flag.
And just so, because I'm getting to know you as well as everyone else, you guys are the feeder program to Bedford Express, correct?
Yeah, we use FTC as a junior high only program, where other teams in the country will use FTC as a cheaper alternative to FRC.
So when you say junior high, what grade are you talking about?
We have 6th through 8th graders on our teams.
Okay. So that opens it up a little bit. When I've heard of FTC and I started doing some investigation, a lot of teams are like 7th and 8th or 7th, 8th, 9th, that type of thing. So you guys are opening it up from 6th through 8th, just for those all 5 teams, right?
Yes, all 5 teams, and we have 15 students on each team.
So how long ago did you guys start?
We started FTC back, 2011, I want to say, in our program. I joined the year after we started the Loose Screws, and I've been there ever since.
Mentor, are you alumni? Did you go through the first program?
Yeah, I was on the Bedford Express, as you mentioned before, from 2009 to 2012.
See, so what I'm recognizing, I only have so many years in first, right? But I'm recognizing that we have 2 distinct sets of mentors. We have the older set of mentors, and now we have a newer set of mentors that's coming through that's all alumni, and they want to give back to first because they did it, and you guys enjoyed yourselves, I'm assuming, because you're leading a team, correct?
Yes, I love the program, and I'm really enjoying leading the teams. It's a huge difference going from being the guy who does everything on the team to, hey, you have to let these kids do everything on the team.
Right, you have to take your hands off, right, and just entrust that you're educating them and you're guiding them in the right fashion, correct?
Yeah, it's really tough at nights when you just want to say, hey, let me tighten that screw. You see them struggling, but you need to let them struggle.
So I think 2 different sets of mentors. We have the older set and the newer set. So I'm betting that it's harder for the alumni to keep their hands off the robot than it is the older.
Most definitely, yeah. I always just want to get in there, start prototyping, start working on the final part. And another thing to watch out for is you can't let your ideas trump the other your kids' ideas. You can't say, oh, yeah, well, this is what the challenge is. This is what a robot's going to be. No, you have to let them come up with all the fun ideas.
And especially 6th through 8th grade, they don't have necessarily the attention span that a high schooler does, or maybe sometimes they do better than a high schooler. Who knows? But have you experienced that with doing FTC?
Oh, the attention span is definitely something you need to keep down real tight on. There were so many bottles I had to confiscate from my students. They kept flipping them.
Let's hope that fad has gone for this coming
Oh,
season.
yeah, but it's been replaced by the fidget spinners, so we'll see how
Yes.
many of those get ejected from the classroom.
I'm sure those are already getting confiscated, and I think that fad's almost run its course of jump. Tell us a little bit about the difference between FRC and FTC.
So, like I said before, FTC is a low budget version of FRC. The robots, instead of being big, adult sized, they have to start in an 18-inch cube. But don't get fooled by that initial height or initial constraint. Some of these robots, these robots in FTC, have to start inside an 18-inch cube. But after that match starts, they can expand to whatever they want. One year, there were teams that expanded well above 2 stories, all starting within 18 inches.
Right. So I mean, you're how would you say NASA skills, because that's how satellites are shot out in orbit, right? They start in these little cubes and then they expand, and you have the reflector. I don't even know what they call them. I'll research it after this. But
Yeah,
the thermal to to gather light and power and all that stuff. So I can understand how it could get pretty large pretty quick.
yeah. These robots are dense. They have to use all 18-inch cubed to get all of their the maximum efficiency out of their robot. Another thing that's interesting is they don't have a weight limit. FRC, they have the 120-pound weight limit. FTC, no, nothing about that. So teams can be light as 15 pounds and be heavy up to 50.
Right, right, and you have to your playing surface is a lot smaller, right? It's a
Yeah.
square rather than like a football field.
Yeah, our playing field is a 12 foot by 12-foot field and usually has some stuff in the center. So it's really hard to use all of the field. You have to move around robots constantly. Another thing with this is instead of 3 versus 3 teams, it's a 2 versus 2. You only have one alliance partner on the field with you at a time.
Right, which makes for longer days because you can only fit 4 teams in a match, and everyone gets a certain amount of matches, right? So,
Yeah, a typical Michigan district will have your team will play in about 6 matches.
but
It's not.
how many teams are there for that event then?
There's still about 36 teams in each event, or at least each district.
Okay, so a pretty intensive day, right? Or a couple day. Well, is it just a 1 day event, or do they do 2 day events, or?
It's the districts are a 1 day event. They'll set up the night before, have inspections and some practice matches, but the entire official event lasts all of a Saturday. When you get to states or super regionals, then you get longer competitions. But
Right,
for our districts, they're just 1 day.
and that helps control costs too, right? Because FRC teams were there for sometimes 3 days, right? Coming on a Thursday night, set up Friday, all day Saturday, maybe stay Saturday night, come back Sunday, or just try to get back on Sunday or Saturday night, depending on what you guys' budget has. So, what do you think an average budget for an FTC team is then?
Average budget's around 1,000 to 2,000 probably. There's a lot of the registration fees you get grants for, and the actual kits that you get, like the electronics, FRC, that's thousands upon thousands of dollars for all your motor controllers. FTC, our electronics kit, I believe, is $600
Oh, wow.
for
So, cheaper. A lot cheaper.
much, much cheaper. Yeah. Instead of having the Robo Rios as the brains, we actually use smartphones.
Okay. Oh, right. Right. Which is kind of cool, actually, because you could think about it coming home, putting a kit of parts together, using your cell phone and just building something rather than the elaborate, electrical and then wiring and then the coding for the big FRC bots.
Yeah, the electronics are a lot simpler too. Instead of having PWM cables and power lines going everywhere, you just have power connecting to the motor controllers and then one line going from the motor controllers to our power distribution board.
So on your team, like on my team for FRC, we have like a drive coach, and then we have a mechanical lead, mentor, and such and so on. Is the FTC a little more condensed with the mentors as well?
Yeah, you with the smaller team size, it's kind of harder to assign a kid a specific role because you want to get them exposed to everything in the program. So if you say, "Hey, you're the build captain," well, what if they want to program? What if they want to do some outreach? You have to let them flow in between all roles. I'm sure some teams have that worked out really fine, but in our program, we kind of have them. They choose what they kind of want to do, but then they'll go and do everything else.
And how many kids? So you guys have 5 teams. How many kids are in each team?
We have about 15 students in each team.
Oh, nice. So not too big and not too small, so they can, kids sometimes not make an event. You can have a backup so far, primary, secondary, so on, right?
Yeah, we all. Sorry,
No worries.
I'm blanking here, but like
Right.
the team captain, they'll usually be assigned, and that's not something you usually assign at the beginning of the season. You kind of let everyone go about, and let them fall into their own roles, and eventually you'll find the leader.
Right, right. The cream will rise to the top, as they say, or someone shows the initiative and says, and then you feel comfortable as a mentor putting it. It's similar in the FRC teams too. I mean, you do have the kids that are just breathe and do nothing but robotics, right? And there's kids that just want some experience.
Yeah. Unfortunately, with the smaller team size, you also get a smaller returning size where you only have after like 10 students or so come back, and then your seniors that have 2 years of experience, you'll only get about 5 of them, maybe. So when it comes to keeping the knowledge, that's more reliant upon the mentors than the students.
So documentation is probably a really big key on an FTC team then.
Yes, and actually, one of the biggest parts of FTC is the engineering notebook. And that actually gets you more awards than Robot. Like it has its own award, and then the Inspire Award, which is essentially the chairman's,
Right.
that award is heavily reliant upon your engineering notebook.
Right. So it's basically it's basically a class. It's the total learning experience.
Yeah, every night they document what they go through. We actually assign one student randomly every night to be the recorder, and they'll mark down everything for the engineering notebook.
So let's talk about, Chris, let's talk about a couple of the past seasons. So 2015-16, it was called First Rescue, right? So can you describe that game a little bit?
Yeah, First Rescue, the big selling point of that game were the 2 giant mountains on opposing sides of the field. That started with a slippery metallic surface that was on a 30-degree angle, and that led into a series of bars that eventually rose to a 45-degree angle. And what you had to do for the rescue game is the field was littered with the 2 previous game seasons game pieces. You had the wiffle balls and the cubes. You had to pick those up and put them in the scoring bins in the center of each mountain. Then also with the mountains, there were climbers that were stuck up there, and you had to press these triggers to release them down there.
Okay.
Another big part were the rescue beacons on the field side or the audience side of the playing field. In autonomous mode, they lit up in a red and blue color. If you pressed your own color, you got bonus points. If you pressed the wrong color, you gave your opponents points.
One thing I've noticed with FTC is there's always a beacon somewhere, in some way, shape, or form.
It's not that there's a beacon, it's that they're starting to really reuse game pieces, which I like because then the returning members have some experience with the challenge. With Rescue and Velocity Vortex, they both used the rescue beacons. With Rescue, they used the wiffle balls and the cubes from the two previous games. And it looks like Relic Recovery is going to be reusing the climbers.
Okay, and we'll get to that. So, but before we do, let's talk about the 16-17 season, which just completed. That was Velocity Vortex, right?
Yes, Velocity Vortex. The big selling point was a giant T-shaped scoring platform in the center that had two goals on each handle of the T. Teams could pick up these wiffle balls called particles and score them through that goal. And also, they could pick up these giant 22-inch diameter exercise balls and in the end game put them on top of the scoring goals.
That doesn't sound very easy.
Oh, no, that was really difficult for teams. Some teams, most would drop the ball at the top, but some teams would even fall over because that ball was pretty heavy, especially compared to the 18-inch cube that you had to start in.
Right, so there goes where you're talking about the weight. If I was building an FTC spot last year for Velocity Vortex, I'd probably make sure it's a little bottom heavy so that you don't tip over as easy.
Yeah, definitely. And then the final part of the Velocity Vortex game were the rescue beacons. There were 4 of them on the viewing the audience side walls. And if you press your color in autonomous mode, you got a massive point bonus and then an additional wiffle ball to score with in the game. So you start with 3 wiffle balls. If you press both of your beacons, you get 2 extra. So you can get 5 of these wiffle balls, and that drastically increases your scoring potential.
Right. So what was the winning solution for Velocity Vortex?
Velocity Vortex, definitely you had to get your 2 beacon autonomous mode. Some robots would get that. We tried to do that. We kind of got it, but we struggled with that. And after you got the 2 beacon autonomous mode, it was just score those particles. You had to keep scoring those guys, and eventually, like, teams in the finals scored upwards of 20 of these. After you score them in the center, they fall back down onto the floor.
So do you think there's a link between the FTC games and the FRC games? I mean, we saw particles last year. We didn't call them particles. We called them fuel, right? And we shot, the biggest teams that won were the ones that shot a lot of fuel up into the top of the thing. So do you think there's a lot of commonality with the games from year to year?
You'll see a lot of similarities, but there's no actual direct link. You can't say that, oh, we had totes this year, so the FTC teams are going to be playing with mini totes. And no, you didn't get that. It's just more of a coincidence than anything else.
So the FTC season starts, like I said, the announcement's on the September 9th, right, for this year. When does it end, FTC season?
It ends the same time the FRC season does. They both go to Worlds. It's at the same city. I don't believe it's in the same venue, though.
Right, and this year it will be in Detroit, of course, and you live in Michigan, I live in Michigan. It's going to be, in our backyard, as I say.
Yes. It's going to make the travel fees a lot nicer for us.
For the next at least 3 years, right? I think it's 3 years that Detroit's got the World Championship. So let's talk about, they put a teaser out. First put a teaser out. It's called Relic Recovery. It's got a little Amazon theme to it. So I'd like to theorize a little bit. Everyone likes to theorize. As mentors, we always, for FRC season, we're trying to think of, and everyone wants a water game, right? Everyone wants a water game. That's the big thing.
Well, you see, with the jungle theme of this, the Amazon theme, they're famous for their large flowing rivers. So obviously, there's going to be a flowing river straight through the center of our FTC field.
And people would lose their minds if that was actually the game.
One of my favorite things that First has done, or Andy Mark has done, is on April Fool's Day, they announced a waterproof box to put all of your electronics in for FTC.
I didn't even know they did that. That's amazing. You know, Andy Baker. I mean, we're sponsored by Andy Mark, by the way, and thanks to Andy Mark for sponsoring us. But I wouldn't put it past Andy to put that out there like that. Andy Baker, he's a great guy. He's pretty funny too. So I could totally see him putting that out there and throwing everyone off a little bit. So are you with that announcement? Of course, that same weekend we have an FRC event at Kettering, right? Kettering University, and that's where they announced that is that same weekend. So are you going to head to Kettering University for that weekend?
Actually, no. There's, I believe, 5 kickoff venues for FTC in Michigan right now, or 5 official. And Bedford is actually hosting our own official kickoff. We're going to have our 5 teams there, and we're looking to get about 5 more from the surrounding area. I'll wait for an official number to come in.
Right.
But the kickoff event, last year we did it just for the Bedford teams, but it was a full day-long process. And we got our kickoff. We had the game reveal at noon, and then we sent each team into their own room to play team building games. And then after each team building game, they went and listened to a seminar that we had some on like game strategy that I hosted. Others were on the engineering notebook side of things, the outreach, and we're looking to do that again this year for our kickoff this season.
So is that for mentors and kids, or is it just mentors, or?
Oh, that's for the whole team. You got all the kids in there, and you got the mentors along with them.
That sounds like an amazing idea that you guys do that. I'm sure that is a fundraiser for you guys as well, right?
Yes.
Because why not raise money right out of the get-go? I'm raising money for my team right now. So I want to wrap that up by December 1st and try to get that out. So when we get into build season, because this will be my first build season, it's going to be nuts. So I just don't want to worry about raising money during build season. So how long is your build season then for an FTC team?
There's no defined limit like the FRC 6 weeks. It's just until your first event is. Sometimes your first event isn't until November. We've actually, some years, gone until December before our first event. So it varies depending on what team you're on. There's no bag and tag. There's no specific rules about weight withholdings or anything. It's really open, and I like that aspect for the FTC.
So is there an advantage for a team to not compete until December to see how the game is going to shake out? Because the FRC team, or the FRC game, right, with Steamworks was different from week 1 than it was in week 9.
Yeah, there are differences in the FTC game, but with the experience that you get and the ability to advance to states at either event, it's pretty beneficial for you to go to to at least 2 events. Skipping an event skips out on a big advantage of getting competition experience, driving experience, and the chance to advance to states.
And do you guys, I wanted to say recruit, but that you guys already have your teams. Do you guys scout like we do in FRC as well?
Yeah, we scout, and you need that. With each team only playing 6 matches, the ranking system doesn't really accurately portray which teams are the best. It's more reliant upon your luck, and there's no additional RP that you can get in each match, unlike the FRC games where you can cross all the defenses or get 40 KPA. There's nothing of that, so it's purely based on your win-loss. And the second tiebreaker of that is I believe it's your opponent's combined score.
So, so I'm going to dive a little bit deeper. So you've been with the FTC for a while. Have you seen a lot of changes between when you started your FTC team to now, as far as the structure with First and the way they're running the games?
The games themselves have always been the 30-second autonomous, 2-minute tele-up driver controlled. The format has kind of changed though. Like states has gone from a lot of teams competing in one division, and they've split that in half where they have two divisions. I think though the biggest change since I first started was the FMS structure. And when I first started, we'd connect to that, drive the two controllers that they gave us on the field. And then one year they said, you know what? There's a lot of problems with that. No FMS.
And for
So
people that are just learning, Chris, what does FMS stand for?
FMS is the field management system. Teams connect to that so they can all have a shared start and end time. However, with FTC now, there's no automatic start or stop. It's all reliant upon each team pressing their start at the same time.
Oh, okay.
I haven't heard of any big problems with that though, and it's actually seemed to play out really smoothly. Teams can work in their code to have their autonomous mode automatically stop after 30 seconds, and they can do the same with their driver control.
So they could probably set that up when they do inspection, is they show the code stops at 30 seconds or something of that, right?
Yeah, and then it's all upon, if they start it late in a match, there's a penalty for starting intentionally late. However, sometimes you just like a second or so, you'll press it, you'll hear it start, and then you'll think, okay, I got to do this. Oh wait, it started. and then
yeah.
And that's on the judges then to make that judgment call
Right.
of whether it was an intentional or not. And most of the time, it's not intentional.
So do you think First is looking at it, trying to figure a new system to start automating the start and start?
I don't know. It's another really good advantage with no FMS system is that teams drive like practicing in the pits, making sure all their systems work. There is no difference between how they start for practicing versus how they start on the field.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a really good point, because with FRC, we don't get to necessarily have that. We have to be hooked to the robot through a LAN cable, and that's the only way we can start, things.
Yeah, and with the old FMS system, there were a lot of problems where you'd start a match and something would happen and your robot would die. And you'd have no idea if it was you or how it interacts with the FMS system.
Let's be honest, and even in FRC, sometimes those first couple weeks, because the fields are brand new, it takes a while to get those bugs, ironed out. I remember the machines that count the balls in the boiler; they weren't easy to set up. I felt, really bad for those guys that had to keep those things going or try to get them in range. It was a headache. I remember here in Michigan at Kettering Week 1, I think we were like a 2.5 hour delay by the time we went into playoffs because of field issues. So
Yeah, I remember those long delays and those weren't fun. But another thing with the FTC is there's almost no automatic scoring. Actually, there is no automatic scoring. It's all reliant on the judges and the field scores to mark down who scored what. And another thing with FTC that's different than FRC is the autonomous period. In FTC, we have a full 30 seconds to run our autonomous mode, where FRC, I believe it's down to 10 now, either 10 or 15. So we get more time to flush that out, but that doesn't mean that autonomous is any easier. They cram so much scoring potential into autonomous mode.
right.
Like this past season, Velocity Vortex. Let's just compare that to Steamworks. In Steamworks, you could place your gear, you could score fuel, and you could cross over a line.
Or you could do all three if you're really good.
Yeah, That's the height too of FRC autonomous. You do all three. Man, that's amazing. Three scoring options. FTC, you can score particles in the center vortex, score particles in the corner vortex. You can knock the cat ball from the center of the field off of the pedestal. You can park on that pedestal either partially or fully, and then you can press the rescue beacons. That's like 6 scoring options, and some teams would do all of that.
All 6 in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could never do that in FRC. I mean, it was just trying to get one element done was a challenge. Getting 2 was pretty good, and getting 3 is like god level stuff that we saw at Worlds. So
yeah, and then with FTC, after the autonomous mode is done, there's a break where the head ref will go on field. They'll mark all of the points that have been scored, and they'll write any robot that has fallen over. Like if 2 robots get stuck together, the head ref will pull them apart.
oh, nice. So it makes it a little bit more fair.
Yeah, right. So you're not immediately screwed if your robot is fallen over in autonomous mode.
Right. Right, because you want the kids to compete because we eventually want these kids to go to FRC in high school. So
and another thing, some head refs will make sure, like they'll tell each team to start their driver controlled period on their phone and make their robot wiggle a little. Make sure that their robot's working before the match starts.
Nice.
That way, when the match starts, they don't stop. They're not stuck.
I wish I could say we could do that at FRC, but with the field control system we have, we can't do that. So,
and that would be too dangerous with FRC, where you got these big 120-plus-pound robots. If something goes wrong in the autonomous code where it doesn't stop fully or something, and you have a human player or a head ref go on the field and try to right that robot, that's some serious danger.
Oh yeah, no, there's no way the safety guys would allow that to happen. If you're dead, you're dead.
Yeah, with FTC, the biggest, like no FTC robot's gonna slam into you at a 10 miles per hour. It's just gonna kind of push up against you, if anything. The biggest thing you have to worry about is the pinch points.
Yeah, ping pong ball, right?
Yeah.
So, do you have any other thoughts of what you're looking for Relic Recovery?
I think we're gonna see a field like usually the field is just foam tiles. Mm-hmm. I think we're gonna see a lot of different obstacles on that field we're gonna have to get through. So, like this last season was great for us. It was a huge open field with pretty much nothing in our way. We actually used Mecanum wheels this season because it was so open. And I don't think we're going to get that for Relic Recovery. I think we're going to get a lot of rough terrain we're going to have to cross over and go through. There might even be a loose snake on there.
Yeah. You never know.
Yeah.
If they can't put water in it, at least they can put a snake in it, right?
Yeah, I think we're also going to get a big temple in the center that we're going to have to either place a relic in there or move them around at least.
So basically, we're talking about Indiana Jones robotic style.
Yeah, but in reverse, they might have to place the relic in there.
Rather than remove the relic from it. I gotcha.
The game teaser said something about returning the relics.
Ah, see, it's all about the little... And I know that the guys that plan these games, they watch every word that they use because us as mentors will analyze every single word that's in the print to try to figure it out prior to the announcement.
Yes, we will. We will overanalyze the heck out of anything we're given.
So, go ahead.
Even when they'll say this is not a game hint, we'll analyze. Well, of course that's a game hint.
Yeah, because they just said it's not. So it's kind of like raising kids. Don't do what I say, and then, they do what you say.
Yeah.
The exact opposite. So, do you think, you brought up a good point about having something on the field that's going to be an obstacle. Do you think it's going to be kind of like And I'm using an FRC reference, Stronghold. Stronghold had so many different terrains that we had to go over. It was nuts.
I think there will be quite a few different terrains. We'll probably get like a leafy terrain or something we'll have to cross over. There'll be some rocks or rigid terrain we'll have to go through. I know in previous seasons in the rescue challenge, we had those long bars. They're called churros we had to climb at the top of the mountains. I'm guessing we're going to see a few of those in this field.
Maybe if you guys don't get water, maybe they'll put sand in there. Because, sand and electronics always work out together.
Oh, don't give them any ideas.
It's too late. Everything's already ordered. Come on. Andy Mark's making the stuff now. It's already too late. But who knows? Maybe there will be sand. Maybe like quicksand where you get sunk down in and you have to crawl out. If no one's watching this video, but I have Chris on video, and every time I threw sand, he was just like, I just, heart shotted you right in the chest. You're like, oh crap.
Yeah, just trying to imagine my kid. Oh, it's not so much the robot, it's the kids coming up with ideas. Someone's going to come up with a hovercraft, and we're going to have to try to tell them, no, a hovercraft isn't feasible. Or, no, a quadcopter, even it's cool, the drone's not going to be that good.
No, I don't think they would ever do anything that's kind of off the ground because there's so many, responsibilities and safety issues when it comes to that. So,
yeah.
So, Chris, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. So I'm going to thank you for volunteering yourself. I put a Twitter announcement out there. I'm looking for FTC mentors because I have FRC mentors all over the place. But when it comes to FTC mentors, what we want to do with this podcast is not only cover FRC, we want to cover FTC because those guys eventually come up to the high school. So it's like a feeder program. And I want to cover that. And in fact, to this day, the very first 2 episodes I ever did of the podcast, when it was called the Robo Code Podcast, had more views and more listens in those 2 FTC episodes than I have almost with all the FRC. So I know that there's kids that want to listen, and there's dads that are out there at a young age that want to know about robotics. So that's why you're the very first FTC guy I have had on here. So you've brought home that moniker. You can put that flag in the ground and tell your kids when you start. He's fist pumping right now. I thank you for coming on. So tell us or tell the listeners how we can follow your team. So give us the social media aspect of how we can follow the team. We'll get you out of here, and we'll see you at the announcement.
You can follow our teams on Facebook. Just search our team numbers with our team names. For my team, it's 5237 Loose Screws, and we'll post as many updates as we can.
And I'm going to include the Bedford Junior High School FTC Robotics link that has all the links to all those teams. I'll put that in the show notes for anyone that's listening. Just look at the show notes. Chris, thank you for stopping by. Especially, I give you a little more credit, because you just moved into this house that we're viewing you in. So thank you for volunteering. You're kind of nuts if you volunteered to come on here and you're just moving into the house. I mean, how much more pressure could you put on yourself other than sand in your new game this year?
Oh, that's rough. I don't like sand. It's coarse and it gets everywhere.
It does. And we'll end on that. So thanks, Chris, for stopping by. I'm signing off.
Thank you for having me, Pete.
The Robozone podcast is brought to you by AndyMark.com, your robot parts experts.
Again, I'd like to thank Chris Summers for stopping by the podcast. Let me interview him, and thanks to Bedford Robotics. Good luck with the upcoming season. So I'm editing the episode right now. It's Monday night. It's 10:20 p.m., and I get this text on my phone of a tweet that First Inspires just put out saying that there's an update to the Relic Recovery game manual. So everyone, visit the link that I have in the description of the podcast. Let's see what this game manual update is, and let the game theorizing start. Thanks for stopping by the Robozone podcast. Please subscribe and review. Give us some feedback by emailing us at robozonepodcast@gmail.com.
The Robozone podcast is brought to you by Kettering University. It's a Kettering-built world. Thanks for listening to the Robozone podcast with your host, Pete Ekman. Find us online at robozonetv.com and on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram.